Welcome in to this edition of Big Drive Energy during spooky season. It's October. It's our favorite time of the year. We're going to talk about the absolute disaster from Shad Tuten this weekend.
I think it's Tuten.
Rootin' Tuten not making the fucking PGA Tour. Disaster for him, unfortunately. We're also going to discuss LIV players still not getting official World Golf ranking points. We're going to discuss my new sticks. Got the PXG sticker now on the laptop. We're official, all the way official. I am that guy now. And we have a special guest for you at the end of the pod. Mark the Caddie, as he's known, at Caddie Tales on X. Great follow, just been caddying his whole life. We're going to have him on for an interview towards the end of the podcast. So make sure you're staying along with us for the whole thing. We'll do some fun ad reads, and then we'll hand it over to ourselves back in the studio with Mark. But of course, all this is brought to you by our great friends, our presenting sponsor, Pins and Aces. And all right, Mitchell, we're going to quiz you again. What did your company that you work for release today?
Oh, shit. I don't know.
Marissa, tap in.
Let him guess.
This is like huge deal. This is like, I hope they don't listen to this shit.
Oh, maybe I'm
the
wrong.
new. I didn't see it on social media. I obviously follow them.
You haven't watched Warehouse Wednesday with our boy Stewie yet.
I did not watch all of it.
And there was no company fucking email on this huge thing?
No, I did not
all right,
get
Marissa, you go.
Is
it the waffle plover?
That is good. That is close.
No.
That's what they posted the other day. No, you guys are both missing it. They released an app today, a complete app that you can download from the Apple Store that you can go right to and purchase all of your stuff using that promo code BDE for 15% off. In the app, they have an app. You have an app. How did you not know this?
Okay, I was informed of this behind the scenes a few weeks ago. They were working on bug fixes for it. So I did not officially know. And me being a rep, I don't really think I want to push that out there for people to go individually buy shit when I'm supposed to be selling them shit. But yeah, I mean, if you don't have a rep, if your local course doesn't carry Pins and Aces, great way to go buy stuff. Great way to see their new merch. I love it. I'm going to have to go check it out after this. I need to cop me some new merch that I don't have to pay for.
Got it downloaded. I've got the Joker hoodie on right now, Fire hoodie. Of course, all the graphics for the Joker in the hood. Make sure you're checking it out. And if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you check us out on YouTube, Big Drive Energy Golf. You can get all of our faces in your screen through the podcast. YouTube is the way to go. And if you're in the YouTube, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. You know, we're almost to a milestone of subscribers. I'm not going to say what that milestone is. You can just go find out and be one of the people one of many tens that joins and subscribes to our YouTube. But if you're listening to this podcast and you like this podcast, give us a rating, hit us with a thumbs up, or on the YouTube as well, or Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, you know, the whole bit. But Pins and Aces, promo code BDE for 15% off. They got the new waffle pullover, as Marissa stated. She's on the social media. They have a new app. You can use our promo code in the app. Let's make sure that bug is fixed for sure. But you can go to the app, download it, use our promo code BDE on every single order and save yourself 15% off and get free shipping. All right, let's tee it up.
Hello, friends. Welcome to this tradition unlike any.
What was that, Chair? Did somebody scream mashed potatoes?
That was mashed.
All right. Shad Tuten. Rootin' Tuten, not making the PGA Tour. Obviously, you heard about this. For those of you that didn't hear about this, so on Sunday, the Korn Ferry Tour Finals, as we know, top 30 players from the Korn Ferry Tour gain full status onto the PGA Tour the following year. Shad Tuten was in 30th place going into one of his final holes. And then at the end, basically, long story short, he took the wrong drop. Taking the wrong drop, dropped him. Thought that was going to be better, but then it didn't sound as good coming out. Dropped him to 32nd place, and he is now not getting his PGA Tour card. Quote from James Nitty's, great last name, by the way. It makes me sick as a past player. There's multiple times we've seen this happen, but give me your thoughts on, they kind of did away with the idea that you can't call in on TV. And this was there was a rule around this, I want to say, where there's a video of him trying to place the ball under the lift, clean, and place rule. It's clear in the video that he placed it one time. The ball rolled forward a little bit. First of all, your thoughts on the overall rules of golf and this, changing this man's career. But second of all, the way it got called out. What are your thoughts?
Well, I would be remiss if I did not mention that our boy Rafa Campos, Pins and Aces wearer of golf clothing, got that 30th spot and is now once again a PGA Tour member. So round of applause for Rafa.
Oh, there's a good side to every story.
Yes. And so actually, was that a circle of claps?
Yeah. Round of applause.
Oh yeah. Okay. That checks out. So Shad, which by the way, terrible name. What?
Yeah. You
Shad,
you can't be on tour with the name Shad Tuten.
No, you can, but what? You just are born into a frat. You just sound like the biggest douchebag on the planet if your name's Shad. I've actually never heard of anybody named that before this dude. So, anywho, I do really feel for the guy, and obviously there was some sour grapes because they posted about Rafa getting his PGA Tour card, and he comments under it, well, he got it due to a shitty ruling, and just a salty comment. I don't know word for word what it said, but he definitely was not too happy about it. The rule itself, it's so, it's kind of how you perceive it, because what's to say the ball clearly rolled forward? How many inches forward did it roll? So I guess they put the hard line on if it rolled forward whatsoever. But then where's the camera angle? Is it directly to the side to see that it went towards the hole, or are they just kind of ballparking it? So first of all, the rule itself sucks. For those of you who don't know, when you are playing lift, clean, and place, you have to place your ball and it has to stay stationary where it's at. And if it rolls any nearer to the hole, you have to place it again. And then if it rolls again, you have to find the nearest point that you can place it and it stays stationary right there. So his first drop, it rolled a little, few inches towards the hole apparently. And he thought it was in play from there, played it, and then found out after his round that this was going to be put into play, this rule, which gave him a 2-stroke penalty in that case. And yeah, so I read that rule because it was back in the day, and now I don't want to sound like I'm dating myself because back in the day wasn't that long ago, but do you remember when Camilo Villegas got kicked out of the Tournament of Champions? Because somebody called in a rule on him where he was chipping it up a hill and he didn't get it all the way up the hill. He took a divot, so there was a little grass in front of his ball up the hill, on the hill. And as the ball was rolling back towards him, he took his club and flipped his divot out of the way. And apparently that was moving a loose impediment that was not okay at the time, which I think they've changed the rule since. But then he got called in from somebody watching on TV, got DQ'd. And that is kind of the first example that I remember of this, when everybody's not everybody's televised, then the whole Patrick Reed, waste bunker gate. So I guess what it is now is because the Korn Ferry Tour finals aren't even televised. So, or some of it is, but not heavily televised. And so they're like, what if, they didn't get this on camera, blah, blah, blah. But apparently they have cameras on every single hole. And they made a rule where if there's video evidence to protect the field that is found out, then it can be used to implement a penalty. So how do you feel about that, Spencer? Do you think that's bullshit, or because realistically it keeps everything fair across the board? Because in the day, there was dudes on the PGA Tour that didn't have a single camera that were probably fudging the rules a little bit. Not saying they were full blown cheating, and then what is cheating? Golf's a game of integrity. You go down that rabbit hole. So tell me what you think of that, because I honestly, I don't hate the fact that it can be used against anybody. It's not just the guys that are on camera near the lead or up at the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, well, so like you said, there was like I spoke to earlier, there was a rule limiting video rules, and there are two exceptions. According to a USGA release, and this is from golf.com, the first standard states, quote, the use of video technology can make it possible to identify things that could not be seen with the naked eye, while the second states, the second standard applies when a player determines a spot, point, position, line, area, distance, or other location in applying the rules, and recognizes that a player should not be held to the degree of precision that can be sometimes provided by video technology. In Tuten's case, the infraction came on a procedural move. And so, like, if he would basically what that's saying, what I'm taking from that is that if the ball moves and you really can't like tell you with your own naked eye, like you're fine when it's just laying in the grass. But the fact that he had to drop it and then this happened, he had to take a procedural move. This is a little high level English for me, but the fact that he had to take a procedural move and then that caused the ball to move again and that caused the penalty is the unfortunate part. I think the worst part about all of this is I think it's just the timing is bad and it's unfortunate. Obviously, like I said, Rafa Campos being a PGA Tour player is awesome for us, awesome for our Pins and Aces guy. But the timing of the fact that he thought he was in and then gets it taken away from him because of this later on, I think that's the biggest annoyance in the rules of golf and the game of golf in general. Is like a couple of years ago when, there was that Rams pass interference penalty and then they changed the rules. You can't go back and change the fact that the Saints might have won the Super Bowl that year, So that's the part that sucks is like other sports, you can't go back and, we get the daunted, basketball's back, NBA is back, our world champion Nuggets are back, but you can't, you get that shitty league last 2-minute report and there's nothing you can do about it, but they can say, oh yeah, this call was wrong. This time was wrong. This guy stepped out of bounds, whatever, but they don't do anything about it. And that's the,
I will say that hockey has implemented some of that where they can go in and call offsides after a goal, which I hate that rule too. So I guess by default, I hate the fact that you can go in afterwards and change a golf score from what it previously was. Because if you catch it at the time, and I guess they maybe need to have a rules person watching every single camera, which I don't know if that's feasible or not, but ultimately it's either enforced or it's not. That's kind of the annoying thing, I think. And I guarantee you there's been a drop taken on lift clean in place or whatever that the ball rolled toward, like this exact example has happened before this year on the PGA Tour or Korn Ferry Tour, and nobody's caught it. So that's just the shitty thing is it couldn't have come at a worse time for Shad to ultimately, like you said, miss out on getting his PGA Tour card because of it. And I mean, the dude's got to be sick, but I really do think that he is going to be on the PGA Tour. He's got that level of talent. It's not going to be his only shot. So luckily, it's not like some lifer 45-year-old mini tour guy that has like the run of his life and then misses out on it by one stroke or whatever, and he's never going to sniff it again, because that would feel even worse. I mean, I feel bad for the dude, but he will have another shot. With him being 32nd on the Korn Ferry Tour, I bet he'll get a few, not spot, maybe even some PGA Tour spots, if not like preferential treatment on qualifiers and like alternates and things like that. So he's still going to get opportunities. It's not like the end of the world for him, but yeah, it fucking sucks for the dude. And like I can't imagine how many sleepless nights he had thinking about that shit. Because I guarantee you, he didn't even think about it in the moment. Like, it's not something that he knowingly did.
Yeah, it's just one of the things of the rules of golf that we all love, but at the same time, rules are rules is rules, and you got to play by them. So it just kind of it sucks, but it's also let's turn this around. Silver lining it. Rafa Campos on the PGA Tour. There's officially a Pins and Aces player on the PGA Tour. Also, before we get into discussing my new PXGs. Which, by the way, PXG had a winner on the Korn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour this past week. Not a big deal. We have to talk about this mic situation. I can't let this slide. This is hilarious content. So after last podcast, Mitchell, as we know, lives in New Jersey now. We do this pod. I do the pod from Denver, and he does it from New Jersey. And he has his own mic, obviously. And he's been using this mic for maybe a year, 2 year and a half. And he is never once on a StreamYard podcast, which is what we do most of them on until we got our lovely producer and now in studio time for every single pod. But when we do a StreamYard podcast, so from our houses or from wherever we are, he has not changed his input to his mic. So he's been holding up a dead mic literally for a year and a half, talking into it. What do you have to say for yourself?
No, that is completely false. It was only last episode. I guarantee you that the audio does not have evidence of that. It was only the last episode. I forgot because, in all honesty, like, I'm not technologically inclined, but I would assume, like, I plug this thing into the computer, it should recognize it and automatically, like, why else would I be plugging it into the computer? So I kind of blame Apple. Maybe that's something they can look into and fix up a little bit, but it should just automatically transfer over to the microphone. So I'm not holding this thing up to my face and just wasting my fucking arm strength, what little there is, to hold this thing up to just talk into my microphone on my computer. So that was last episode. So if the audio sounded like shit, I apologize. Because Spencer realized it after. He goes, dude, your audio, like, I had my mic set down and he goes, your audio sounds the exact same. And I'm like, what the fuck? So, come to find out, I just didn't use my mic last episode.
You got closer to the computer and your voice got louder. And I was like, why is his voice getting louder when he's getting closer to the computer if he's still holding the mic? And then he put the mic under the fucking couch and decided to, like, turn on the mic finally and use it. And then I just heard some mice rustling around under your couch, eating some of your Cheez-Its. That's what I got. Yeah. So just had to tell that little story, a great little tidbit from the users of technology that we semi are and are not on our phones, but not, this whole mic scenario and plugging things in is not our strong suit.
Yeah, I somewhat blame you for not. You said that you kind of started to recognize it, and you see something, you say something, bro.
I didn't want to call you out.
You could have let me know, so I could just set my mic down. And yeah, I blame everybody except for myself. Whenever I'm the king of finding scapegoats, so here we are. It's not my fault.
Love it. All right, on to my new sticks. I finally got to play with them. PXGs, Gen 6 irons, incredible product. I played a little morning niner yesterday, and first shot at Willis Case on the back nine is a par 3, about 148 yards, and I just stiffed one to like 6 feet. No big deal. It did get
what model did you get?
The Gen 6, the 0311s.
I was gonna say there's different heads. There's not just Gen 6. Like,
yeah, the 0311s. The not the full player's blade, but right kind of the one next to that. So
yeah, like a muscle cavity. Like they're definitely so those were the ones I hit when we were at the PXG studios, and I actually really like the feel of them. They look really good from the top line. I don't love the look from the back. The big, like, gray, like, weight kind of looks a little gaudy to me.
Do you think it looks better though than the, like, 5 weights in the back that there's, like, their standard look for so long?
Yes, it definitely looks a little bit more clean. I'd still like to see him clean it up a little bit further. But you know, whatever makes you happy. Different strokes for different folks. My Mizunos look way better than that, but ultimately it comes down to who hits it better. So it is the archer, not the arrow, in the
I
old saying.
I did hit some great iron shots. Back nine at Willis Case is like a fun, a good spot to hit a lot of irons off the tee, which I prefer to do ideally. Anytime I don't have to hit driver, especially
Don't
after
go as
not,
far offline for sure.
especially not having played in a couple like weeks. I was like, all right, I'm gonna hit driver as little as possible. But funny story. So we played with this guy. I played with my wife and I brought my kid out, and we played this guy named Reed. He's subscribed to the podcast, so shout out to you, Reed, if you're listening. But super cool dude. Me and him got to talk because we had Sawyer in the seat, next to Kylie in the cart. But Reed, I got to call you out on something. He didn't know we had a fucking kid in the cart till the 5th hole. Like literally we pulled him out because he started to cry and he goes, "Holy shit, you got a kid." 5
Like,
holes in. We'd been
just-
playing for an hour and 20 minutes.
Just a lack of social awareness. Like, talk about really not actually giving a shit what's going on in your golf cart. Like, he didn't
Yeah.
he didn't know there was an infant child in there rustling around like a little fucking mole.
Yeah, exactly. Just
wiggling
sleeping,
around
making
and-
noise, doing whatever.
Yeah.
So Reed, you were fun to play with. Shout out to you. You were a good time. But that shit was fucking, I was like, what? I was like, how did you not know this?
That's hilarious.
And I'm not big like show my baby guy, but the fucking 3/4 of the cart was full of a car seat. A little full on like stroller was in there.
Are you going to be that guy where somebody's like, "How's the weather today?" and you're like, "Here's my kid." Like,
No, dude. I am show picture dad. Like when there's another dad and we're talking about a kid, I am show picture guy. Which I'll own that. But I'm not like, yeah, like how's the weather? Here's my, hey, check him out. Like that's not me.
Totally. Like I kind of equate kids to like farts a little bit. Like you love your own and you just love your own brand, but nobody else really cares for it. So, but then when they're, when somebody else is talking about their farts, you're like, oh yeah, I love my farts. So like, I don't know if that's super off base or not, but I just know so many people that live vicariously through their kids that as long as you're not that guy, and I know you're not, so I'm okay with that. But I will admit that even like I show a lot of pictures that you send to me to Missy pretty frequently, my girlfriend, because she's kind of the de facto aunt for right now. Well, it remains to be seen if she will be the official aunt in the future. That's still, up in the air. But as of right now, she's somewhat of Sawyer's aunt. So I'm like, oh, look at this cute picture of Sawyer. Like, just where his head is so fucking big that he couldn't even fit a cap onto his head that our mom sewed him, or knitted him or crocheted him, whatever the fuck. But anywho, I was going to bring this up because whenever you get new clubs, did you go through that phase where you're like, I literally can't hit a bad shot with these? And then you hit that first bad shot and all your trust just like crumbles to the ground.
Most of my awful golf shots yesterday were wedges, which are my old wedges. Like I would hit like a iron shot to like 100, 110 yards out, like pretty solid. And then I just would just puke on a wedge. Like that happened like 4 times. It was embarrassing. And a couple of holes I hit driver out of play. So literally it wasn't, I haven't got there yet. I'm playing on Friday in the Superintendent's Revenge at Broken Tee. Shout out to Broken Tee. And if you've never played in the Superintendent's Revenge, there's a lot of crazy shit on the course. So I'm sure we'll have like a toilet bowl around the hole. We'll have some holes that are right on the ridges where we have to putt 3 or 4 times. Like, I don't know if every hole's going to be hard, but I think most of them will be. I don't know if it's like we used to do heaven and hell, so kind of half and half. And then we also did Superintendent's Revenge, where some of the holes were easy, some were hard. But just kind of the superintendent gets to get back at all the players, so they enjoy that, I'm sure. But I'll play on Friday with that and see kind of how it goes on a full, 18 holes, hitting driver, because it's a scramble, so hitting driver all the time will be fun. It'll be fun to like get a full go with these things before I play golf again on Monday, which Monday should be a riot at Flying Horse. Just one of my favorite courses, so I love it there. I love the vibes there. So I'll get like a 9 holes and then a practice round scramble scenario and then a full go at it on Monday.
Okay. I like the sounds of that. I figured when you said that you hit the wedges poorly, that meant you were just calling your boy over at PXG to get fit for some wedges, because you're just apparently that guy now that just runs and gets new equipment whenever they suck.
Well, I've sucked for a while and I haven't changed clubs for a while, so it's exciting for me. But I will say though, you can tell, like, I know I'm getting older and like not as like when we got new clubs back in the day, right? That shit was out of the box. It was in your bag. These things were in their box in my living room for like a week and a half to 2 weeks before I even got them in the bag. And I'm a busy man, I get that, but like I wasn't like that overly excited to get those into my golf bag because I wasn't playing too. But the same point, like normally we would have been like cleaning out our bags, putting all the shit in there, shining up the new clubs. And I was like, well, they can just stay in the box. I even went on a trip, came back, still in the box, still in the living room, but finally got them in the bag and now getting to play three times in 6 days. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, there's definitely something as you get older where it becomes less about the new shiny thing and more about what you can trust. And that goes even further than golf clubs. You can, there, there's something about getting older where you just want consistency. You don't need, the newest thing every 6 months. You just want to know what you're going to get. There's something to be said for that in life. So I think as you get older, you just become more appreciative of that, like not having to go get a new car every year or do, all of that kind of shit. You just kind of get comfortable with what you like, and you really don't give a shit if it's the newest or the best or whatever. You just know what you're going to get. So I feel that, like, when I got my new sticks, I was pretty afraid, like right off the bat, to put them right in play. Like you said, you kind of want a little bit of time to feel it out, to get the yardages, to get the weight down, all that shit. So I totally get that, but I will be looking forward to your report back. I definitely have a little FOMO that you're going out to Flying Horse, because that is also one of my favorite tracks, but uh, there's nothing I can do about it. I might try to get out and play some golf next week. I was supposed to play this last Saturday, but apparently it just rains here only on the weekends when we can go do fun shit. So it's supposed to rain again this weekend, and hope maybe not next weekend, but I should be. I know we're going to try to get out to North Jersey Country Club sometime in the next few weeks, which is a really nice spot out here. So I need to make sure that I don't make a complete fool of myself. So I actually went and hit range balls yesterday, and hopefully I'll get out there a few other times this week or next week and shake a little bit of that rust off, because before yesterday I hadn't hit balls in probably 6 weeks, so it's been a bloodbath.
Jesus, yeah, I think that's what attributed me to. Normally when I'd get new clubs, especially irons. Like new driver doesn't worry me. I have so many new putters all the time that I'm actually better when I get a new putter for a small period of time, whether that's one hole or one round. But irons, I used to be like terrified to switch. And this time I wasn't. And maybe it's because I didn't expect anything from when I played anyways, because I hadn't played in a while. So I don't know if that was like the overarching factor that I wasn't worried. But normally when I put new sticks in the bag, I'm like, oh God, like what if I don't hit these as well as my old clubs? You kind of want to like go back to it. And I'm like, obviously, there's no turning back for me now. I'm not spending X amount of dollars on new irons and not playing them. And not
Yeah.
being, the PXG guy, but I was definitely fucking worried for like a few seconds. But I was like, yeah, it's like when you jump in the pool, you're getting wet no matter what. You just got to jump in.
Yeah. No, I remember I equated it to like right when you're about to go get your haircut, you look in the mirror, you're like, fuck, I kind of like my hair right now. Like, why am I going to get a haircut? But it's too late. You're not canceling that haircut. You're going to get your haircut. So, yeah, you just got to commit to it. And I think you probably felt a little less uptight because you actually got fit for these clubs. So you knew they were built for you. So you weren't like having to worry about adjusting in a bad way. I think you were more like excited to see how well you did with them. So enough talking about your fucking PXGs. You're that guy now. If you ever wear a PXG hat, unless we're sponsored by them, I will be out on you for sure.
Oh man, you're all the way out if it's a hat, huh?
Yeah. It's
Well,
just I'm gonna think you're Billy Horschel, and I'm not gonna like it. So
oh man, that hurts. Well, I'm a pins and aces hat guy only, or my sports team's hats, pins and aces, few random ones from golf courses I've played, and that's kind of and Puma hats, and that's kind of my rotation of hats. I won't get into the PXG game with hats just to keep you happy. How's that sound?
that sounds great. As long as you keep that merchandise, pins and aces only, I think we're gooch.
Gucci. What is not Gucci though is it was just announced that LIV golf players going into 2024, even though this deal is signed and I don't know when it takes effect, but LIV golf players will still not receive world golf rankings points. This from Nuclear Golf on X, breaking at LIV Golf will not receive official world golf ranking points, says Peter Dawson, chairman of the official world golf ranking board. We are not at war with them. This decision to make them eligible is not political. It is entirely technical. LIV players are self-evidently good enough to be ranked. They're just not playing in a format where they can be ranked equitably with the other 24 tours and thousands of players trying to compete on them via the AP News. So let's dive into that a little bit. What are your thoughts on, first of all, them not getting the official world golf ranking points? Second of all, basically saying that the LIV Tour is not real golf almost. It's almost like they said that they're playing two-person scrambles every week.
Yeah, this reeks to me of a governing body hiding behind ancient rules to stand on a leg that they, basically die on the hill that they've stood on for some time now. But you can't fucking tell me that they couldn't just make an equitable like ratio of points based on okay, like the Asian tour gets a certain amount of points, which is actually owned by the LIV Tour. But ultimately, I think that they just want to hide behind this ruling instead of actually stepping up and changing something. Because even if, say, only the top 8 to 10 LIV guys qualified for the Masters or whatever, versus the PGA Tour, it's the top 30 or 40. So there's so many ways that they could have done this that made more sense than just saying no. So it's just another frustrating thing to me, and it almost makes me feel like they strictly made this deal, the PGA Tour and LIV, to kind of get out of these lawsuits. But it sounds like they're going to keep it pretty separate entity wise, because otherwise you would have thought that some guys on the PGA Tour, and maybe this goes to show you that the governing body, quote unquote, cannot be bought and paid for by the PGA Tour. So there's so many different options, but I just think they dropped the ball on this because we're gonna have maybe a handful of dudes from the LIV Tour and the Masters next year. And maybe the Masters just goes to invite only. They just invite who they want, who they think is qualified enough to play in their event, instead of making it a ranking system, which was the beauty of golf. But it's only the beauty of golf if you're in the certain ranking system that they want you to be in. So so many thoughts that went through my head when I read that, and it's so disappointing. I was really excited to see what golf was going to look like next year. But maybe we have to wait even longer, if it ever changes. So it sucks. I think it's a joke. And obviously there's plenty of dudes on the LIV Tour that belong in all the majors. So I just wish that's what I ultimately want.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same, it seems like. And it looks like we're not going to have any difference next year. I think the interesting part is to see if, LIV generally schedules around majors, obviously, so their players can go play in those. It will be interesting to see how many more, now that we're a year past it, like guys like Cam Smith, let's say, I guess he's not a great example because he won the Open Championship, so he has some exemptions for, I believe, 2 years into a couple of other, like the U.S. Open or whatever. But it will be interesting to see all of the LIV players that have to go and full on qualify for these events and how many of them want to do it. Because that's the ultimate test of if they don't really care to do that. There's some guys out there like that Jetta Morgan or whatever. I just like to shit talk him because he's on Cam's team and he's fucking horrible. Like guys like that will never probably qualify for a US Open, or, you know, if they had to go through the grueling, you know, qualifiers, 36 holes, all that stuff, they may. I'm not saying they're bad golfers, but they're not in the, you know, Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson level. But it will be interesting to see those guys that do try to qualify, because if they're trying to qualify, that kind of signifies to me that they know these are still important. I mean, everybody knows majors are important, but like their career is more important than just making money. You know, the guys that just take a week off because there's a major and they don't want to play in it because they didn't qualify, they just are, you know, it's clearly just for the money. And there's guys that say LIV is for the money. There's guys that say it isn't. We all kind of know it is, but that amount of LIV players that decide to try to qualify for US Opens, or decide to try to qualify for the Open Championship, and then, you know, the PGA Championship is obviously the furthest one away. Like those guys are not just getting into that tournament, but no one even cares about that major anyways, really. So, you know, it will go to show you, you know, all right, we'll see where those guys think they stand and if they can get in, you know, based on going through a qualifying process, just like me or you would have to, essentially.
Yeah, well, and that brings up another point too. It's like, how much does it suck for the guys that are kind of on the fringe of being able to qualify? And then you got to play against, you know, 20 former PGA Tour players that now have to go qualify. Like, you're basically playing a borderline PGA Tour field just to qualify for the US Open or the British Open. And I'm not saying it's not supposed to be tough, because it obviously is, but it's already hard enough. Then you have to face, you know, 15 dudes that are all more than qualified to play on the PGA Tour golf game wise in order to get into those majors. Like, it sucks for them too. So it's got the trickle down effect where it affects more than just LIV players. But yeah, ultimately they need to figure their shit out, because I'm kind of done with them, you know, playing this moral high ground bullshit. And golf is already kind of looked at that way anyways. But you just need to bend the knee at some point and give these LIV guys what they want, give the LIV Tour what they want, because ultimately it's going to make golf a better product. And if they can't see the forest for the trees on that, then I don't know what to tell them. There's a bunch of idiots.
Exactly. All right, we are going to get to our interview with Mark the Caddie. But first, I want to tell you guys, of course, our great friends over at Bet365. Bet365 is the app that we place all of our bets on. Use code DNVR365 at sign up, and you get $365 in bonus bets when you bet just $1. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. They have great super boosts and boosts. They always have the each way bet, which is super easy to use. And we're going to use that here in our picks for the Shriners Hospital of Children's Open this coming weekend, or championship. I don't know, maybe they changed that. Crazy 5-for-1 playoff there, by the way, to get some guys in. This is one of the best Monday qualifiers of the year. But Bet365 has not only golf, they have an NFL payout offer where you get a straight bet paid out in the parlays selection as winners if your NFL team goes up by 17 points at any point in the game. So that would have been useful for Bears fans a couple weeks ago when the Broncos beat them because they were up 21, but they didn't win the game. So Bet365 has a bunch of great offers, and we bet through them every single week on Big Bet Energy. Let's get into our picks real quick. My picks this week. So once again, these are the each ways. We're going to pick 2 players for the fall series and then have one bet from our $365 of bonus bets that we get from Bet365. And I'm going with my 2 players this week are Tom Hoagie, Ugly Man Tom Hoagie, and then Matthew Neesmith. Matt Neesmith, close enough to our name, just adds a little knee into it. He was leading the tournament last week after round 1. I was close to picking him there last week, but he's been great at this course at TPC Summerlin in Vegas. You know, Tom Kim is the defending champion here, but Matthew Neesmith's been great here, and he's plus 6,600 to win it, and Tom Hoagie cut that in half at plus 3,300 on the each way bet. My free bet of this week is going to be Joel Damon. He had a good week last week as well. I'm looking for him to continue. Bucket hat in Vegas is just a vibe at TPC Summerlin for Joel Damon, and him to top 7 is plus 1,400. So those are my 3 bets with Bet365 for this week's Shriners Open in Vegas, TPC Summerlin.
Okay, I like that. So this week I'm rolling Adam Hadwin and Garrick Higo. Hadwin just seems like the guy that doesn't dominate these fall events or off-season events, but he's kind of the upper echelon of players that play in these events, in my opinion, like talent-wise, player-wise. Dude's just gets the ball in the hole, so you can't really argue with that. And he's plus 4,000, so I like those odds. And then Garrick Higo lost in a playoff last week. I know he hasn't been super consistent, but played really good golf last week, so you got to think he's in good form, and he's plus 5,500. So I also like those odds. And then I got Peter Quest with my bonus bet. I got Peter Quest with a K, finishing top 10 plus 850. This dude emerged onto the scene last year, kind of in the middle of this, or last season, not last year, earlier this year, last season. Really played some good golf in the middle of the summer and got his PGA Tour card. And just a young stud out of BYU that's full of confidence. And I think he played well last week too. So Peter Quest plus 850 to top 10. And actually, I will say for fall events, Summerlin is probably my favorite. The Shriners at TPC Summerlin is probably my favorite fall event. Just a fun watch. So I will be tuning into some of that this weekend.
Yeah, it's NFL weekend, but for us, NFL is a little lower on our totem pole. And we have the Broncos on Thursday night, so we don't have to watch the Broncos on Sunday. We can just take in on NFL Sunday. I'm going to fire up Red Zone, and I'm going to be drinking a Breckenridge Distillery bourbon whiskey, the official bourbon of the Denver Broncos, Breckenridge Bourbon, the highest distillery in the country. Go to BreckenridgeDistillery.com. There's still a couple of weeks left to enter into the Broncos Bourbon Contest. You can have the seats in the suite, Breckenridge Distillery suite, at the Broncos game on New Year's Eve against the Chargers. I'm sure that'll be a real bang-up game when we're 1-12 or whatever we are at that point. But the Breckenridge Distillery is the official bourbon of the Denver Broncos. I had a few shots of Breckenridge Distillery vodka, the new vodka Broncos Blizzard this past weekend. Had to celebrate. The Broncos wore the white helmets, and they made a vodka for it. So Breckenridge Distillery is not only in Colorado, you can get it in all 50 states. Check out www.breckenridgedistillery.com to see where you can get it from your local liquor store. Also want to shout out our friends over at Burrito Express. Best breakfast burritos in the world. They're located in Arizona. So if you're down in AZ, I plan to be down there a few times this winter. We'll be down again for the wasted management and playing some golf. Get a trip out there. Get your boys, get your girls, trip out to Arizona, play some golf, and get yourself some Burrito Express at the Tempe location. They're a great local company. They support college athletes, and the guys went down to Tempe this past week for Arizona State or CU at Arizona State, got some Burrito Express. They are the best breakfast burritos in the world. Make sure to check them out, especially the Tempe location right by Arizona State. All right, that wraps it up for this portion of the pod. We're going to turn it over to ourselves with Mark the Caddie at Caddie Tales on Twitter. All right, now hopping on to Big Drive Energy with us, we have Mark Mylats. Did I get it?
Pretty close.
Hey, all right. We got pretty close. We have better known as Mark the Caddie at Caddie Tales on Twitter. We're gonna get into all sorts of stories today. I'm sure this guy has seen it all. He actually has a book coming out next Wednesday, I believe, correct? Next Wednesday is when it goes live on Amazon?
That is right, and available for pre-order as early as tonight.
Heck yeah, I'm getting mine today. Already excited to read that book. It's called Caddie Tales, A Looper's Search for Lost Golf Balls and What He Found Instead. So let's just hop right into it. What was it, before we talk about your actual caddy job and caddying around the world and doing what you've done for so long, what was it like writing a book?
Yeah, it was a cathartic experience, as readers will find out. It is certainly full of stories from my experiences on the golf course, but I tie them into my own life experiences. I got into caddying in 2019 after just really making some big bad choices in my life during a difficult time, and ended up losing my career and a whole lot, and hurting a lot of people and my family and myself and all of that. And so this Caddie journey was also the beginning of a healing journey, and we moved from Michigan to Wisconsin, where I fell into a job that I thought would last a year, just hoping to hold my family together and provide ends meet. And it's something that I really fell in love with, and it's been part of helping to relearn how to find purpose, and it's been a part of the process of finding hope and healing and growth. And so I see that a lot of what happens on the golf course mirrors life pretty closely. And so I think readers will find that out. And anyone who's ever been on a golf course will certainly be able to relate. And then those who are not golfers will be able to look at their own life and maybe understand a little more what golf is like.
Yeah, we've found so we grew up in golf, started when we were both about 12, 13 years old, and found pretty quickly that it'll humble you every day of the week, and but it also give you it's the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and it's just you versus an inanimate object. It's not you're playing it for a score, but you're playing against an inanimate object essentially.
Right. And I constantly talk about it being the great equalizer. I have the opportunity to interact with some people who are pretty successful, whether in professional sports or other, significant careers. Certainly, people with high net worths, and at some point, everybody's really, really bad at golf. And so, it for a lot of people, it's something that humbles them or seeks to humble them, and I find that to be a pretty neat thing to be able to see. I don't want to see people suffer, but I find it really interesting to see how these people who I can't relate to on so many levels, when we're out there on the golf course, they're just like me and I'm just like them.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. And I think it's kind of almost a test of people's ego if they're willing to go golf, even if they know they're not good, because you're going to embarrass yourself if
Yeah,
you're not super familiar. So I actually respect the people that are willing to put themselves through it, knowing that it's going to be a struggle, and
yeah,
just
yeah,
finding a way to enjoy it regardless of their skill level, because it takes a
yeah.
lot of courage to do it.
That's right. Yep. It is something that I find that if people can find a way to just remember that it's a fun game, there's a lot of personal growth that takes place out there. And I've seen a lot of people who, just like there's some people who it humbles and they don't do such a great job with it. There's some others who are really inspiring because they learn to kind of just roll with it, and that's a good life lesson too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, so I can obviously tell by your accent, you're Midwestern. You said you're originally from Michigan,
Yeah,
and we're also our mom's from Iowa, our dad's from, or I'm sorry, our mom's from Minnesota, our dad's from Iowa. So we're
yeah,
Midwest boys ourselves at heart, even though we never lived in the Midwest.
you're right.
But give us a little bit of a rundown just on your backstory with like how you got into golf. It sounds like
Yeah,
you're from Michigan, so.
yeah, yeah. So I have a pretty unique story, and I think it's going to be one that either readers understand or there's going to be some who just really don't. And that's the scary part about putting yourself out there. Is I actually by trade was a pastor in my previous life, and it's something that is for people who don't know, it's one of those jobs that it's more than a job, but people view it as something that it's really not. It's so difficult and isolating and humbling, and everything about it can be lonely and hard, and yet you're supposed to present this picture so often that you've got everything put together, and people want you to be humble, but they also want you to be perfect. It's just a very difficult road for people to walk, and there's a lot of pastors I know who do it great. There's a lot I know who suffer in silence, and I was one of those guys. And when that happens and you don't get help and you isolate, you end up making poor choices. And in my case, I let things kind of boil over to the point where I was losing my temper very often. I was abusing alcohol in a very unhealthy way. And then to cover up one bad thing, you do another bad thing. And I ended up misusing some church resources to kind of hide things from my family and to make things easier. And it just kind of blew up my life. And it's a humiliating story to tell. It's a hard story to tell. It's one that I feel a deep sense of loss every time I have to recount it. And so I resigned from my position at the end of 2018. Felt very scared, felt very alone, and unsure about what the future held. We made a decision to move to Wisconsin, where my wife grew up on a dairy farm. And very nearby, about a mile away from her dairy farm, is a world class golf course that has a caddy program. And at Christmas time of 2018, before we had made the final decision to move, my brother-in-law made the comment that, caddies at the course do really well. And so I looked into it. One thing led to another. I went through the interviews, I went through the training, and then in May of 2019, I started. And boy, the first few weeks, I didn't think I was going to make it. I was hoping then to just make it through the season, hold my life together. And through time, also one thing led to another, but in this case, it was some good stuff. And I ended up really falling in love with doing it. I ended up uh, being able to have some fun and some laughs and take my mind off some of the things that were causing me anxiety. Meet a lot of cool people, both in the caddy shack and then also on the course. And it's just been a truly transformative experience that I'm very, very thankful for. And so, my time that I spend on Twitter and my time that I spend in this book is just an opportunity to recount some of what I've gone through. I think not only is it good for me to talk about it as part of the healing process, I do think there's some people out there who may be able to relate to it. And whether they, have the same job as I had or even share the same faith background or whatever, I think a lot of people can relate to in life. We all go through some pretty, dark valleys. We fall into some pretty deep holes, and sometimes it can feel hopeless. And just like golf, though, no matter how deep a bunker you hit in or how far out of bounds you shank it, there's always a next shot. There's always hope. And it just takes one to keep you coming back, as all golfers know.
That's awesome, man. So did you have a background in golf before you were like the passive
Not a,
thing,
not
or?
a, not a significant one. I like golf like any average person, like a lot of guys. I played golf in a golf league, with other men. But it wasn't something that I ever thought, oh, this is going to become my career. And, so those early loops, I remember my second loop of the seat ever. I was caddying for somebody who knew 10 times more about golf than I did. And, um, he was gracious and all that, but I like, oh man. And so it's been a bit of a baptism by fire, just kind of learning about it. And getting immersed in it, it's easy to get passionate about it pretty quickly. It's a fun game. It's great to be around. And then you're in a setting that's beautiful. You're around people who are experiencing great friendship and fellowship. And so it once I got more immersed, it wasn't hard for it to become more important. But before that, I was like a lot of guys. I have 4 kids. I had a job. There was only so much time for it, and so I was just your average hacker who played when I could, and but didn't make it this huge priority. And so it's kind of a journey that is unexpected, but I think that's kind of made it all the more special for me as well.
That's very cool. I love just the fact that kind of what golf has brought to you in these recent years. Everybody goes through life, and like you said, you go through different phases, and to find something like that at Whistling Straits is so awesome. So I love that. Like you mentioned before, you caddy at Whistling Straits. So Spencer has actually played there before. I've never played there. But
Mm-hmm.
get into a little bit, like, because obviously your first caddying gig, you're getting, like you said, baptism by fire, but it's not just any country club.
Yeah.
It's one of the most, destination courses in America. It's where
Yeah.
everybody wants to come and play. So
Yeah.
kind of give us an idea of what looked different, like what you think look different at Whistling Straits versus like just going to your, not typical club, but it is
Right.
obviously a different place.
Yeah. First of all, kudos to, like the management and stuff and staff at the course, because they do put you through a good training process and prepare you in that way. So I was thankful for that. And then also to the, fellow caddies, you're, early on connected to guys who are veterans or who are really good, and they help you through as well. But yeah, I happen to work at one of the most beautiful places and one of the most difficult golf courses that there is. And, I would say that I was, what I learned right away is that this is not a place that you come and uh, shoot your best score. A lot of people, even good golfers, go through some really tough days there. And so there's no doubt, there's some serious golf. There's some serious golfers. There's some who are less serious and are there on like a buddy's trip or whatever. But in a lot of ways, you're helping people survive. You're trying to help keep them positive. A lot of really powerful people are there who aren't used to a lot of failure. And so not only are they playing the game of golf, which is going to give that to you occasionally, they're playing at a place that's going to exacerbate that. And so the golf knowledge is really, really important. You got to know your stuff. And I do know that over the course of 5 years, I've really grown in that arena and have become very comfortable with the information that I'm sharing. And I think it's helpful. But I think as equally important, and it's something that I would encourage anyone who wants to become a caddy to understand, it's a people business, and learning how to communicate effectively with these people is so vitally important. You got to know when to be encouraging. You got to know when to kind of shut up and back off. You got to know how to, help them maybe choose a route that they don't want to because it's a safer route, but also help them to think that it was their idea. You need to pad egos. And in one of the chapters of the book is titled Ego Consultant. And I talk about how one day somebody called me their ego consultant, and how that name just has really stuck with me. And I see that being a very, very important part of my job, that I want to be an encourager through the round with people. And so I try to keep positive and help them to stay positive as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. So like Mitchell was saying, it's kind of a joke on our podcast now because I talk about how many times I played Whistling Straits, I played it once, but I talk a ton about it just because I'm not joking you. It was like an out of body experience for me because we went up to Wisconsin. This was actually like October of 2020. So COVID was still a thing. There was, masks and all this stuff. And obviously the Ryder Cup had just been canceled there no, it was coming up in 2021. So at that point, they didn't know if it was going to have it or no, that's right. It was 2020.
Yeah, so they had already announced the cancellation for 2020, but it was, then they rescheduled it to 21.
Yeah, and then so we were up there, and when we drove in, there was snow everywhere. And in Colorado, where we grew up, we're like, I told my wife, I was like, we're fucked. We're not playing today. I was like, we're here. Let's go see the clubhouse. Let's go buy some merch, whatever. So I walk into the shop, and so I'm a PGA professional, so I didn't have to take a caddy, and now I wish I would have 100%. But my wife was at the time brand new at golf, and so I'm like, we don't need anybody else here, as nice as you guys are, and I know that she doesn't. But we walk in the pro shop, and he's like, "Oh no, we only got about a 40-minute weather delay, and then you'll be able to go off." And I was like, "No fucking way!" And first hole we teed off, and snow all over the fairway. And by the time we got to Shipwreck, it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. I was mesmerized.
Yeah, that's funny. We're in that part of the year. So we had 80-degree weather last week, the first couple days of the week. And tomorrow I'm trying to get myself mentally prepared for 50 degrees, 35-mile-an-hour winds, and over an inch of rain. And the monsters who will play in that weather. But a lot of them are like you. They're from out of state and they're there, so that's when they're going to play. Yeah.
We were the only, and the craziest part about it is we were the only two people on the entire golf course from 1 to 7. When we got to
Yeah.
7,
Yeah.
we saw a group on, I believe, 2 or 3 that connect, kind of the green and the tee box
Yeah.
at 2 or 3. So we were the only people out there, and it was like cold and there was snow and it was foggy, but it was an unbelievable experience. And
Yeah. Yeah.
you've been quoted in an article saying a caddy won't help a 20 handicap break 80 at the straights. And I felt that because I consider myself a scratch golfer. I'm probably legitimately like a 2 or a 3 if I held a handicap. I can shoot rounds under par, I can shoot par, and I can shoot 85. And I hit it about as good as I could all day at Whistling Straits, and I think I shot 81. And I was tearing down flags. I hit it to 2 feet on 7 and made birdie. Like I was just hitting some great. I also hit a few balls in Lake Michigan for sure. But the overarch, it's just such a tough course. And how do you get like a player that is like you said, a good, well, more of a good player, like a guy that normally shoots in the 80s, and just like tell him like, hey, most likely you're gonna, that he's gonna shoot 95 there.
Right. It's an art, and sometimes you just give up and realize they're going to have to learn for themselves. But it starts at the bag drop when you're beating guys, and just little things like maybe encouraging them to play a tee box forward than they were thinking, or just stressing. It's going to be really windy out there, or letting them to have right-sized expectations, and that's a very challenging thing to have. Everybody comes and wants to do well, and I would say there's kind of a progression on the course, and this is a generalization. Every round is difficult, but if I had to say, what I feel like happens all the time is you got, and this is especially true of like young guys who come, or buddies trips, or maybe where there's going to be some competitiveness. They come and everybody's excited and they're going to go low, or they've got a score target in mind, or they want to win. And it's already by hole 4 or 5 that they're looking at each other and going, whoa, this place is really tough. Yeah, I think we, even if it's unspoken, it's kind of like, yeah, we need to recalibrate here. and then, uh, and then after hole 6, there's kind of a decision. Maybe one in the group says, okay, I'm just drinking now. And then by the turn window, reality is set in and people are maybe a little more laid back. Uh, and then at hole 14, usually people have just gotten so tired out. So like on hole 1, you might have guys ask you like 9 questions about where to hit the ball. How far is that bunker? Which club should I use? Da 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 da. And then by hole 14, it's just like they just come grab a club and hit and walk, And so I find that to be kind of funny. But yeah, it's just it's a tougher place. And it's, people ask us, we always joke as caddies, everyone asks us, like, do we play every day? Like, for one, you're working, and, there's only so many hours in the day. But two, we really, most of the caddies, except for maybe some of the young single guys, don't want to go out and walk Whistling Straits all the time after they've gotten done lugging around somebody else's bags. And a lot of times, caddies, we do have a great golf perk as part of our employment, and we have 4 championship beautiful golf courses as part of our company. But sometimes you just want to go to a local course and not get beaten up too, because you need your ego stroked, or you need to not have such a hard round, or you just want to have more fun or whatever. And so there's a time and a place for that as well.
Yeah, we found the same thing as golf pros. As everybody goes, oh, you probably play so much golf. It's like, if you're at the golf course, no matter what you're doing, if you're caddying, if you're in the cart barn, if you're in the pro shop, it's tough, because, and it might be a little bit different for you because you're not as into golf, I guess, or it's not like an obsession that makes you like get, a lot of people get into the game of golf and like want to be a golf pro because they're obsessed with golf, and then they end up playing no golf. But we were always the ones where everyone was like, well, don't you just play all the time? And we're like, no, we work, and then we leave, and we want to go, we want to have a life separate from here. So that is definitely there's a middle ground. Like, if you can get in 1 round a week or whatever, because you don't want to resent the place either and just look at it as a place of work. So you kind of want to take a step back and be able to appreciate it a little bit. But
there's another caddy that I work with quite often, and he's just kind of he'll start to ask me, do you like to go to your job on your day off? And I get it. our job is unique. I mean, it's different than the accountant. Absolutely. But yeah, there's sometimes you're just tired or whatever. You know what you just mentioned about club pros that I touch on them a little bit in the book because I have found them to be. I guess I don't know what I had in my head, but I found them all to be pretty humble and realistic about the game. And I caddied for two last week. Really cool guys from Florida. It was a really enjoyable loop. And I want to say they shot like you could tell they had talent. You could tell they had skills, but they probably shot close to 90 maybe by the time it was done. It was windy and all that, and I loved it because a couple of times I looked at them and they were looking at each other and they just started laughing after they because it was so like. And then I remember one time they had like other people that they were with that weren't club pros, but they knew like the people from the course, and there was like somebody hit a ball and the guy's just like the pro was like, "What are you supposed to do?" Like it was an impossible lie or shot or whatever. But I've learned, these guys don't get to play a ton or practice a ton because of all their other responsibilities. And so I really appreciated that they came out and had fun and that they were able to come and enjoy the place for what it was and not get too worked up about it. And I loved that, it kind of made me feel kind of cool that I worked at this place that these guys were laughing about some of the shots, like how ridiculously hard. Now, I don't want to scare anybody away. I think you should come and experience that one time. I absolutely think you should. I think you should just come with the right mindset, like that it's not the same as this country club that you might belong to with these wide open fairways and where it's completely flat or whatever, where people putt out of bunkers. That's not really the same kind of place that we've got going on.
No, yeah, it's a little different than that for sure. So you mentioned talking with some of the other caddies. What are some of the things? So we've created a TikTok basically from the start of. We just did it to mess around a couple of years ago, and it's kind of gotten huge. And we basically just reenact what people do when they walk in the pro shop because it seems like people lose their complete mind and they don't understand how to be a human being anymore, and they ask these questions. So we got to know, like, what are some of like the one or two of the things that you guys get as caddies all the time where it's like, no matter what, somebody's going to ask it or going to say it. And you all look at each other and you're like, yep, there it was. There it is again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there's the list of questions. We all joke, we'll be like, where are you from? You got any kids? What do you do in the winter? What do you do in the winter? There's like a list of questions people go through. But the one we'll laugh at is we'll be like on the second loop of a day, and it'll be like 7:00 in the evening, and the person will look at us and be like, "So you going on another one today?" And we're like, and the thing that I think is funny is I have found that a lot of these corporate people and maybe people who have really good jobs or they can afford to come to a place like ours aren't always happy in that career, and so and I see this on Twitter too. They glorify caddying, and I've heard a number say, and I've even seen a few tweet about it this week, where they just wish they could do it. It's their dream job or whatever. And for some reason, I think people have it in their heads that guys just work 24/7. Like you never take a day off, and it's like, do you realize, sir, what you just put me through with this? With these two bags and the 5.5 hours we just spent, going back and how many times a day do you think you can do this? And how many hours of daylight do you think they are? So it's funny. You're like, these are really, really smart people, but they just kind of lose their head there. And that's one of the questions that we laugh about. So, and then the there's just other things that you can kind of gauge from people when you meet them. Just kind of even things like their golf bags. They might be really heavy, and you ask them to take something out, maybe lighten it up a little bit, and they're like, I think I have everything, and then you start going through it, and there's stuff in there from like 5 years ago or then as soon as you get onto the course, you'll suggest a club, and there'll be a club there that's like, oh yeah, I never hit that one, and you're like, well, why didn't we just take it out of the bag? And so there's all kinds of stuff, and if you get too worked up about it, you'll be miserable. So you just kind of laugh or nod and smile and move on.
Well, so
you probably.
I'm crossing out my "what do you do in the winter" question right now, so that one you don't have to worry about that one.
there's nothing wrong with the question. It's just like, it's funny because for that person, it's a entirely reasonable thing to ask. Caddie's just like, when you get asked it 150 times over the course of a year, you just, it's just, I always think about like when you go, like, I had to think about when I got annoyed at the doctor or something, like you wait really long or they're not as attentive as you want. And you're like, you know what, this might be a big thing going on in my life, but they've got like 80 other people waiting right now. So it's not maybe as personal or deeply emotional for them. And in the same way, I work there every day and it's a special place and a special job. But for that person, it's even, it's like this thing they've planned for a year, and so it's just really big to them. And so, whereas I might hear the question 150 times a year, well, it's the first time they asked it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's basically the equivalent of like golf Super Bowl. Whenever, no matter what you're dealing with on the day to day, and probably one of the tougher things about caddying is you could be having a real shitty day personally, but you're trying to go out and be a part of a special round for somebody because you
Right.
know that this isn't their typical, just
Yeah.
Tuesday afternoon round. Like you said, they've been planning for a year. Like this is something they've looked forward to. So I'm sure you kind of take it upon yourself a little bit too to be a part of, and caddies always are a part of what makes it special when you go to courses like that.
Yeah,
So
I think Kohler does a good job of emphasizing that with their hospitality program in general, that whether it's on the golf course or at the resort, the customers should be able to expect a world class experience. And I do think that the caddies um, do generally take seriously that we're the person that they spend the most time with. So you can make or break somebody's trip, and I think certainly the caddies who are more veteran, who've been around, feel that way. And so even if they might not care for one group as much as another, or they're getting on there, they certainly hide that or put that deep down, and try to give them a really pleasant experience. And the new guys, if they're going to stick around for a while, well, they learn to do that as well. So I think that you want to give people who paid that kind of money a good experience. A lot of times too, for the younger people who come, it's like not only did they pay a lot of money, but they're really really excited about it. And I think that's really fun. I do appreciate that when you have maybe, almost all of our golfers have had some, worldly level of success, to be able to come. And so, there's nobody really standing in food lines that are, playing there. But, you have some who are just uber wealthy and they've been all over. Maybe they don't appreciate it as much as the person who had to save all year for it. And I kind of appreciate those groups where, and I like it when like these guys are walking down the fairway and they just look at each other and then they look out at the lake and they're like, they kind of like grab each other's shoulders and they're like, "Isn't this awesome?" It's really fun to kind of be uh, along for the ride on something like that. And that's, to me, so you guys are golf club pros, and you have this passion for golf, and I've developed much more of one. But for me, the thing that I still appreciate most is the social element of golf, like the foursomes that get together, maybe the golf buddies trip that's been together for 20 years or 30 years, and they once a year, that's the only time they see each other, but it's at some golf course that they plan to go to. I love that about golf, how it's an individual sport. It's just you and that ball, like you mentioned, but it's also inherently social, and how a great deal of fellowship is fostered and strengthened while out there. And I love being able to be a part of that.
Yeah, you're like the extended arm of like creating their experience and creating the time that they have out there. I want to get into that a little bit. We want people to read the book. Go get the book, pre-order it tonight. It comes out next Wednesday, Caddie Tales. But you got to give us maybe your funniest or just one of your loops where the whole round you were just baffled by the person, either in a good way or in a bad way.
Yeah. Well, I'll just briefly mention there. I had a guy who, he had already had a lot to drink by the time I met him. It was, and because he played on a round in the morning, and it happened to be our second loop of the day, and he just kept drinking double transfusion after double transfusion, and I still shake my head about how he got funnier. A lot of times guys, either they get obnoxious or they start to get kind of tired and whatever from drinking too much. And this guy just kept getting funnier and whatever. And then he shot the best score that I've seen out there from our blue tees and in the 60s even. And I was like, how are you doing this? And him and his group asked me and the other caddy to go with him. That was a Friday night, and they asked us, will you go with us again on Sunday? We're playing again on Sunday. And I'm like, I don't know that we can recreate this magic. Because my experience is when you're with a group that's there multiple days, it's not my favorite thing to take a request because maybe that day they had just a good round, or maybe like in this case they're just drinking a lot and they loved everybody. And then on Sunday you have them and they're like rushing to catch a flight. They're hungover. They've had 3 bad nights of sleep on their trip. It's just not the same vibe. But they assured us that they would drink heavily again and be just as fun. And I'm not gonna lie, they were. And he shot 69 again on Sunday. And so I still think about that guy all the time. And that was
He
that was COVID year. So that was something else. And then I've seen it's hard to distinguish one club throw or f bomb or whatever from another. But you see your fair share of that. I probably the the thing that leaves me scratching my head the most is when we have like tournaments that people have to pay to get into. They're not like you don't qualify for them. You might qualify for a flight within the tournament, but it's like a pay to play kind of thing. And the seriousness with which people take it and themselves, and the rules officials that they all become, and the way that they are looking to build maybe their self-esteem or whatever on that round, it can be very unpleasant. And that gets back to like the whole idea of having unrealistic expectations. You'll have guys come and tell you their score need for that day, or they'll get to a green and they're 90 feet away, but the putt matters for if they're going to place or something. And from 90 feet away, they're like, I really need to make this one. And I'm like, yeah, you know, I don't know what to tell you. It's you're just setting yourself up for failure, and it can be frustrating because they're setting me up for failure. Because the implication is if I point to a spot that's just right, that they're going to make it, and so that's one of my maybe not my favorite things, and it does sometimes leave me shaking my head. Like you do know that on the PGA Tour, like they don't make these putts, right? And so yeah, those are a couple of things that come to mind.
Yeah, there's definitely an expectation, and sadly enough, I'm sure you found, and we also have found, just being in golf, is the better a player is, usually the more realistic they are with their
Absolutely,
expectations.
100%,
And yeah,
100%. Yeah.
and so that leads me to, you kind of answered the question, but what is the best single round that you've
Yeah.
looped for, where at the end of it you're like, holy shit, that just happened? Like, wow.
Yeah. The guy that comes to mind is that guy who shot 69 a couple of times. I did caddy this year for a guy who played on the Champions Tour and was on the PGA Tour. Not a big name, but somebody who made a good living playing golf, so not a bad way to live life. And I was taken aback by just you know how consistent they were. Like sometimes you're holding you're like, okay, maybe use your 140-yard club and aim there, and you're holding your breath, like you're just like, I can't go down another hill or back up it or what, you don't know what's going to happen. And you guys are around the game enough to know that sometimes it's their 140 club, sometimes it's their 110 club, sometimes it's their 170 club, who knows. And this guy, I just was like, the consistency, like I wasn't, you stopped having to be afraid if he was going to just shank it. He might not have hit every shot, but he wasn't going to like just shank it somewhere, into the abyss. And so that's kind of fun to be able to do. to get a break. And then, but that's much more uncommon than the round where like people are just chunking it around, because once it starts to go bad and they're walking and they're tired and they're, maybe they've had some drinks or whatever, it snowballs, and there's a lot of places to find trouble, and there's usually some wind or weather conditions. And so it can get pretty, the scores can get high from time to time.
Yeah, it can get dicey out there. I remember on the 9th hole, so my wife had just gotten into golf. She wasn't very good. She can hit the ball pretty well, but not like consistently. And we got to 9, and that hill that goes down into the I believe it's water. I don't remember for sure. On the right side of 9's fairway, that's not too far off of it. It was still wet, and she stepped on that and slid on her ass down the entire thing and borderline into the pond. And I just was like, oh God, we're not going to play the back 9. And she made it through, but there's some wild hills and grass and just things that you're like, holy shit, how am I going to find a ball in this?
Yeah. I mean, you can slide down, and I'm surprised. Knock on wood here, because we'll probably have to do another interview next week after I tear my ACL. But I was going to say, I'm surprised that I have not gotten severely injured. Because sometimes you're walking down a steep hill with 2 bags, and now they train us how to do it properly and stuff. But I'm still kind of a big, not so nimble fella, and so there's bound to be some trouble every now and then. It hasn't happened to too many players. Now, I have caddied for some local orthopedic surgeons, and they tell me that when we've had tournaments out there, that they get their fair share of fans who break ankles or whatever. Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, with that terrain, it's bound to happen.
Yeah.
Well, so have you ever tracked? Because I've only walked 36 a handful of times in a day, and I kind of guesstimated I probably was somewhere in the ballpark of 30,000 steps or so.
Yeah.
So have you tracked ever? What's the most you've done in a single day?
So I would say that on a normal 2-loop day, I'm up probably around 17 miles. But my
Dear God.
but my record is 21. And that was just two rounds of big hitters hitting it opposite sides of the fairway and wanting you to go look for all of them, and probably 11 hours out on the course that day, just on the course, not the waiting time or whatever. And 21 miles. I was with a guy earlier this year. My loop went a lot better, but we were on the same foursome. But he hit almost 11 miles, and he was just cursing me in between holes because he was just miserable because my guys were good, and we're just walking down the fairway. So it can range from 7 to 10. You're probably more often around the 8-mile range if you're carrying 2 bags. But yeah, it's is so around 40,000 steps maybe, but it
Dear
wears on you.
God.
Yeah, and there's some guys though. So I fight having to do double loops as much as I can. The money adds up and it's nice and all that, but it's hard. We have a few people who do it 5 days a week, and I don't know how. I do it 2 times a week max, and it's very rare that I do it 2 times a week every week for there's the busy part of the season, but there's some weeks where we don't get around to me having to go on a second loop. So maybe 20 times a season I do 2 loops, maybe 15, who knows. In previous years it was more than this year, and I hate every second of it. And then there's some guys who are eager to do it 5 times a week, and they're just built different. And there's only a handful of them. There's maybe 10 guys out of 200 who do that, and the rest of us play a game where we just try to get out of it as much as we can.
Yeah, you draw straws for who gets to get out of the double
Yeah.
loop, but I can only imagine.
You kind of know how many players there are that day. You know what your report time was. If you get done at this time and they're still loose, maybe you're going to have to go out. But it's this, and some guys get real anxiety on their face, wondering, am I going to be sent out for the last loop of the day? And so and we're to the point of the year now where you pretty much aren't going to have to do any more double loops, and so guys like that. So because it's just kind of freedom when you go in, you're doing one and going home.
I can only imagine how good you sleep those double loop nights, though.
Yeah,
Like you just
yeah,
gotta
yeah.
hit horizontal and you're
Yeah.
out.
Except for when you roll over and you're writhing in pain a little. No, there is a little bit of that, but you do you're tired, and there is something to be said. And I didn't get to experience this in my former life, and this is why caddying has been a little healthier for me. When you're in a career like I was, you very rarely see visible progress because there's always it feels like the work's never done. It feels like for every step forward you take two steps back, or there's just not a lot of visible progress. And so I always remember pastors I would talk to wanted to go and become like landscapers because they could start at the beginning of the day with maybe unmowed grass, and then you had something to show for it at the end of the day. Well, in the same way with caddying, the way my body feels at the end of the day, I am thankful for, because it says, okay, you worked 12 hours today, but you can feel it. Your body feels it. Your mind feels it. There was something to show for it. And I didn't always get to experience that in the past. And I really appreciate that now about the caddy role.
So after caddying for a couple of years there, obviously the course front and back. Do you take kind of some personal pride in, obviously, golf is such a random game and people can have a great looking swing and shoot 120 there. They can have a horrible swing and play and make a good score. But do you kind of pride yourself sometimes during the round of like giving a guy a really good read on a putt and then he gets in a groove?
Absolutely. And I think all caddies do. For me, I just had a guy like this the other day. High handicapper. I don't know what he said he was, maybe 18 or whatever. And on the back nine of the straights, he ended up parring 4 holes. And part of it was we were just really comfortable. He was a good guy, and I took to him because I know he was trying really hard, uh, and I felt like, actually, me and the other caddy even said this on the 18th tee box. We said we feel like we really helped this group today, and you don't always feel that. Like sometimes you're like, it didn't matter what you tell them, they couldn't execute anything. There's days like that too. But on that particular day, a few days ago, we really felt that, and we were hopeful that then it would be compensated generously. We didn't know and stuff, but yeah, you do take pride in that, and especially when there's a really good golfer who can execute what you're telling them, you take pride in it because you know that. For them, your knowledge was meaningful, especially when they say, "Oh, I wouldn't have known to go there, or I wouldn't have known to not go there." When you're with somebody else who's maybe a high handicapper, I take pride in trying to keep them out of trouble. Get them through as unscathed as possible, get them through as happy as possible. So there's different ways that you kind of can gauge success on a loop. Sometimes it's the actual score. Sometimes it's did they maintain a good attitude and have fun, even though they were hacking it all around the place.
Yeah. Do you guys do you have like a set of, I know it's not probably like a form you fill out or anything that serious, but when you get the guy on the first hole or the girl on the first tee box and you're like, do you ask them like some questions of, do you normally hit, what do you normally shoot? Or do you hit a draw? Do you hit a fade?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you're generally asking them like, how far do they drive the ball off the tee? Because you're trying to help them figure out the right tee box to play. Yeah, you do ask if they play a cut or a fade because you're kind of wanting to learn what kind of lines to give them, or targets. And sometimes players look at you like, I don't know, I don't know what it's going to do. And so I'll say sometimes, well, I'm going to give you the finishing spot. How you get there or if you get there is going to be up to you. And you know, um, yeah, and then like especially when I have shorter hitters, whether it could be a lady, it could be an older gentleman, it could be somebody that I just see whether that they're not hitting far. I'll kind of ask them, well, how far do you hit it? What's the furthest you can hit it if we're in the fairway? And that'll let me to know, okay, am I sending them to the green here, or do I have to still send them on a route there where they're going to be safe, but they have no chance of getting to the green in regulation, for instance, but I want to keep them safe. So there is, yeah, not a long list, but you're trying to get a feel. And, but I have also found that the serious golfers, they're going to tell you without asking, and so they'll let you know what they need and what they want.
Well, so I've seen you interact a little bit with Lou Stagner on Twitter, and he's the king of the golf facts, or
Yeah,
statistics, as you would say. So, how many dudes show up on the first tee and they tell you they hit it 290 or 300,
yeah, yeah.
and you get
Well,
out there and they're 260?
yeah. I mean, it's. I would say that it's the overwhelming majority of people over dramatize how far they hit the ball,
Yeah.
and they occasionally hit it that far. So I've learned to say, how far do you consistently drive the ball? And I put the word consistently in there. And everyone still says 280, but that's like the number that everybody seems to hit is 280. But no, and then the other thing that I've noticed is just with clubs in general. I think people think because they hit something, it's their 170 club, they hit it on the range. Some people really do think it's going to go that exact distance every single time they swing the club, and so then, like, when it doesn't, they'll turn and stare at you or whatever. And I had a lady not too long ago, and she was a wonderful lady, and we got along really well, but we had to have some banter though, because she was a very literal person, and if you gave her a spot on the green for a putt, and even if the putt like rolled around the hole 3 times and it was that close to going in but didn't, if she hit that spot, she didn't know why it didn't go in, and stuff. And so there was one bunker, she was 40 yards away from the flag, and so I said, I told her the distance, but it had this huge lip, and I said, let's just worry about getting over that, okay? But she's just very adamant, like, okay, she's picking her 40-yard club. So she hits it and she sculls it over the green. So it probably went like, I don't know, 100 yards, because huge greens out there. And I said to her, oh, yeah, it rolled through the green. And she just looks at me with this look of bewilderment. Well, it's my 40-yard club. And I said, well, that time you hit it 100. I don't know what to tell you. And so I find that to be kind of a funny little thing to navigate, and all that. But yeah, Lou Stagner's been awesome, because I quote him all the time out there, and I wish I should actually just make a list of things like his best of stuff and hand it to players on an index card before we start, because I think they'd enjoy the game more, to be quite honest. I think if they thought about it, like, they'd let themselves off the hook a little bit, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's honestly changed my personal game. We had him on the podcast a couple months back, and it's changed my personal game. I played just 9 holes Tuesday morning, and I had hit a perfect drive, and I had like 100 yards in the fairway, and I hit this wedge like 15 yards over left of the green, and I was like, oh, I probably should have done that about half the time, and I like wasn't as mad about it. Whereas normally I'm sitting 100 yards in the fairway, I think I should hit to 6 feet every time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I just quoted him the other day on, like, hey, let's, hit driver. We want to get as close as we can. We don't have to be 100, because people will say, oh, I want to be a full swing out, 100 yards. And, certainly people are comfortable with what they're comfortable with, but people have like convinced themselves, I have to hit my approach shot from 100 yards out. And I'm like, no, I mean, if we're 30 away, Lou Stagner says you're going to have a better chance of, getting in quicker and stuff. So I think that he's been invaluable. But I also find golfers are a pleasantly stubborn people. They're generally type A. They're generally bosses. A lot of them. They're strong-willed personalities, and so when the type of caddying that I do is, you're also, you're working for a gratuity. You're not working for a professional. You're working you're their service worker for the day, and so there's only so much pushing you want to do. You certainly want to guide people who want to be guided, but if somebody is just dead set on something, it's their round, they paid for it, they can do with it what they want.
Yeah, I'm sure you've probably ran into some old school caddies because they get a little bit more less
Yeah,
likely to take bullshit as they get older.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
sure you get a few guys, that have been there, they're a little bit more seasoned, and somebody starts giving it to them and they give it right back to them. I'm sure you've
yeah.
seen that before too.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, it was funny. We had a real good banter with this group the other day, and so they requested for me to go with them again the next day. And the guy that I just mentioned, who had 4 pars, now that was mixed in. He probably shot over 100. I know he shot over 100, but he's like, Mark, tomorrow I'm going to expect to go under par, and I said, well, then I'm going to expect you to hit the ball straighter, and and you have to know which group you're with, because there's some who will, I mean, these guys were all yucking it up and eating any of that kind of stuff up, but, yeah, you certainly want to. One thing that I appreciate a lot is when you're with somebody who knows whether they pushed or pulled a putt. I have found like that's somebody who like makes the job for the caddy so much easier because when somebody doesn't know they pushed or pulled it and then they stare you down like you gave them a bad read. I mean, there's no doubt every caddy gives a read that's off. I mean, it's not as exact a science as people make it out to be, and you don't know which speed people are hitting it at or exactly how the greens, or it might hit a bump, whatever. There's all kinds of factors, but sometimes people just miss it or it goes left because they pull it, and sometimes they push it. And so whenever somebody right away goes, "Oh, I pushed it," you just kind of breathe a sigh of relief because it says they're a little more realistic and down to earth about things. I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, they're not unwilling to blame themselves, and
Yeah,
you're not just the scapegoat for the round of golf.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
well, uh, I want to go. I want to ask one non-golf related question. I see that you're a Lions fan.
I am.
Um,
Yeah,
so we're Broncos fans. We're not
yeah,
unfamiliar with the former plight of the Lions fans suffering because we've dealt with this for the last better part of a decade now.
yeah.
How excited are you for this season and how good they look? I mean, they're so fun to watch.
I tell you what, man, it's awesome. I am. I think now we have 3 Lions fans out of about 200 some caddies in the shack. Obviously, majority Packer fans, and then there's some who come from all over. But um, yeah, it was fun to walk in the day after the Thursday night game against the Packers, and I'm 47 years old, and the Lions have won one playoff game in my life. When I was a sophomore in high school, and so we'll have fans. It could be the Broncos. A lot of times it seems like it's New York Giants fans or whatever. It's going to be Patriots fans. I know it before long, and they come from these cities and they'll be like, "Oh, we suck," and I'm like, "You have no right to talk like that." Be a Lions fan, and there's no more suffering fan base in all of sports. And then people say, maybe the Cleveland Browns. No, the Cleveland Browns have won playoff. I mean, one playoff game since 1957. My now deceased mother, who died in her 80s, saw like one playoff win, for crying out loud. It's crazy. So yeah, it's fun. A part of me misses being there, but nowadays they're on with national coverage and stuff. It's easier to follow than maybe when I was a kid and I wouldn't have been living there. So and you know what I find is really interesting around here. So you got Bears, Lions, Packers, Vikings in this division. And growing up, I thought the Lions were considered a rival with these teams. No, no. You move here, you realize they don't respect us. We're not a rival, and they just disrespect us. But now what I find is, as these teams realize maybe it's not their year and they're not going to win, I think we're going to have some people jumping on the line. There's nobody like saying, "Oh, we don't want the line." They're like all like, "Oh, we're happy for you, Mark," or "Hey, they look really good," or "Hey, if it's not going to be my team, why not let the Lions win, for crying out loud?" I have found that not only from the guys in the shack, but a ton of golfers. Everyone's kind of like, "Yeah, the Lions look good. Let's go," and so I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I feel like Dan Campbell has kind of, because I mean, in the whole Hard Knocks thing, I feel like kind of ingratiated a lot of people, or made a lot of people appreciate what was going on up there, and like you said, what they've dealt with for
Yeah.
so many, what you guys have dealt with for so many years. So and who's your all-time favorite Lions fan that's not Barry Sanders, that's a little bit off the
Yeah,
beaten path?
actually, it's always it's certainly Barry Sanders, but my favorite Lion of all time, and this is weird to say because I'm a diehard Michigan fan, and my favorite Lion of all time went to Ohio State, and that's Chris Spielman. But I love the guy, and
Okay.
yeah, but he's got some Dan. You can see how he hired Dan Campbell. I mean, they're like Dan Campbell's maybe a little more boisterous version of Chris Spielman. And by the way, if either of them want to come to the street, I'll caddy for free. I mean, those guys, Dan Campbell would be like a dream to caddy for. He'd probably just grab his own bag and it would look like a thimble on his back. But
Yep.
he would be a dream to caddy for, and he'd probably have me sprinting around that course. He'd have me so pumped up. So
He'd have you doing high knees down the middle of the fairway.
yeah, yeah. But sorry about the Broncos. I know they're on tonight too, and it's probably not going to go well. But
Well, we're actually coming to. We do a brothers trip every year and go watch a game in another city, and we're going to Detroit this year. So
oh,
it's
good.
it's not going to be fun for us, other than the game won't be. The rest of the time we always have a good time, but the game will be not as fun as I thought it would be when we booked these tickets.
Yeah, well, enjoy it. The downtown area has become quite good, and it's a fun place to go and watch a game.
Yeah, I'm excited for it to be inside. We always go mid-December,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
enjoying
yeah.
that. Wearing a t-shirt, wearing a jersey, and that's it. So.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for taking the time to join us, man. Go buy this book. Go pre-order this book, Caddie Tales, right now. I'm going to pre-order mine tonight on Amazon, get it next week. I'm excited to read it, man. Just hearing your story, and not even just the golf part of it, the whole how it relates to your life, and you've kind of found this new, and basically have found a new life with caddying and what it's taught you, and not just on the golf course, but what it's taught you off the golf course. So we appreciate you joining us, man, and we'll look for that book to come out, and I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, just search Caddy Tales on Amazon. And if people want to follow me on Twitter as well, and there will be plenty of updates there. So I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
All righty. Bye now.
All right. Bye.